What are you doing? Oh, the Bible thing? I hit record already. So it'll be in the thing.
That's fine. But when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit upon his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered in his presence, and he will separate the people as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then these righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will say, "I tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." Then the king will turn to those on the left and say, "Away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons. For I was hungry, and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked, and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me." Then they will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and not help you?" And he will answer, "I tell you the truth. When you refused to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me." And they will go away into eternal punishment. But the righteous will go into eternal life.
Hmm.
That's an intense passage.
It is. I really like this time when you read it. Like I've read it before, but this time hearing it, you who are blessed by my Father, um, it just struck me a little different. Like, I've been thinking that that's sort of the way that it works. Like, people that are there are people that are not blessed by God, and you often think of that in the form of God is withholding something from them, but He's not. That's not how He operates. He doesn't withhold, and so uh, the response to what God is not withholding is blessed or not blessed. And so it's in the sheep or the goat that there's an acceptance or a rejection of the furious longing of God. That's
Mm.
the Brennan Manning book, from which I'm pulling this quote. "I've decided that if I had my life to live over again, I would not only climb more mountains, swim more rivers, and watch more sunsets. I wouldn't only jettison my hot water bottle, raincoat, umbrella, parachute, and raft. I would not only go barefoot earlier in the spring and stay out later in the fall, but I would devote not one more minute to monitoring my spiritual growth. No, not one." That's Brennan Manning in The Furious Longing of God. How did that strike you, James?
Well, it made me think of, I think it was Purity of the Heart is to Will One Thing by Kierkegaard. I never finished that book, but he was kind of pulling from Ecclesiastes about the whole expression that all is vanity. And Kierkegaard was saying something like, the person who says that, like, you have to ask them, like, how old are you? You know, only someone who's lived their life can say such things and it actually has an impact. But to hear like a 12-year-old say, all is vanity, to dance or not to dance, it's like, you've never danced, you can't really say that. You're just saying that because you read it. But since the old man, the old teacher who is at the end of his life looking back, it's like that perspective is what bolsters the meaning that's trying to be conveyed. But if you don't, that's what's important. And
Hmm.
Brennan Manning can say at the end of his life, that's an important thing to keep in mind while he's saying that. Like,
Yeah, it's one of his last books.
yeah, it helped me like to take note of that. Like, I think that's why I like talking to people. I spend a lot of time with people who are much older than me. I really have my whole life. Um, like even yesterday, I was at this staff Christmas party, and I, the church I go to is mostly, like late 60s, early 70s people, and all the conversations are just like, each week is like a new pain they're rip it off like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, how is it going? Oh, my back is, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, last week was the shoulders. They just make a joke like that type of thing, like, still in pain, like these type of things, and it's always like that enjoy it while it lasts type of conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's an important. It really does broaden your perspective, like keep the frame of mind. Um, I was with the kids because I teach, and so they were being kids, getting really petty about things like a tit for tat, like cutting their nose off to spite their face, like asking for help, but then like not with me, but like with their friend. But then their friend says something and is like, I don't want you to help me anymore. But it's like they obviously want them to help them still. But just the petty. And I was really thinking, I was telling them like, don't be petty. And they're like, what does petty mean? I'm like, what does petty mean? I know what I mean when I say that. It's like, well, just don't lose sight of what's actually important. It's like you're kind of getting lost. But petty is like what's secondary. What is non-important. It's and from this quote is recognizing how much is monitoring your spiritual growth. To call that petty, it's like there's a part of you is like that's kind of a dangerous expression. That sounds like bad advice. And to the Pharisaical mind, I feel like that's terrible advice. To not monitor your spiritual growth. That's what's most important is your spiritual walk with God, most certainly. And so I think that's why it packs such a punch.
When you said what you said about the 12-year-old quoting Ecclesiastes, you want to keep that friend close, the 12-year-old, because it's a cool 12-year-old.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I'm surrounded by them actually, which is really sweet.
That is really sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sixth grade classroom that James gets to teach is a fascinating world. I'm sure we all are envious of those 12-year-olds. But what it made me think is I've been learning a little bit about this idea of something that's transjective. Okay, so we think of objective truth and subjective truth, but something that's transjectively true would be true by shared experience. It's a really cool concept. I think it was coined by John Vervaeke, but it definitely has been popularized by him. And what struck me about what you said in conjunction with that terminology is that the writer of Ecclesiastes has lived life. And so he's writing from experience. It's his experience. It's not our experience. And maybe the older you get, the more experiences you have, you can sort of like check off his list of like, yep, that's vanity, that's vanity, that's vanity. Everything's vanity, right? But if you start there as an objective truth, then you will not experience anything. And so then it's actually a very interesting book. And it's one of those weird ones in the Bible where it's like, how are you supposed to take this literally? Or what's the principle that you take out of this? Because it's very easy to think of things that the Bible says as like, you just think of it through the lens of your culture, right? So you say, well, what's vanity is actually what Paul is talking about, like the riches of this world and appearances and the things that we can all sort of get on board with. But when he talks about like eating or dancing or things that you, whatever, just normal kind of everyday things that you enjoy, then you start to get in trouble because you're like, well, if that's objectively true, then I don't want to do those things. There's a whole group of people that say that together. And then there's another group of people that are like, well, actually, dancing is probably the thing I'm most passionate about. And there's nothing unholy about the way, that I'm acting this out. And it's very pure in the mind of the dancer or whatever. And so they have a very different experience from the people who'd never experienced dancing, because it's objectively true that it's just vanity and it's not good. And I don't even know if that's where, like, I'm thinking of denominations where that's like, you can't dance.
I'm thinking
But
Footloose.
yeah, yes. Now I'm thinking of the song from that movie. But anyway, the transjective idea is like you get to experience the truth of it through your own experience. So you join together in relationship through shared experience, and then you can reason through your experiences of like, hey, I danced and whatever. Not, it was like not the point of my life. Okay, that's fine. And the other person is like, I danced and I really like thrive in that environment. The physical art of it is so captivating. And maybe they could go too far and say, this is the most important thing. And I have a cousin. It's very important to her. Um, she's a dancer. I forget what the group is called, but it's like the Backup Rockettes. And so they're like the kicky leg girls that do like show stuff, Broadway show stuff. But she's on the B team yet so far. But it's her life. She moved to New York City and then she moved to Tampa, Florida, and this is what she does. So dancing's very important. But I would say it's not probably the most important thing in life, right? So if you get too far to say it's that way, then through transjective experience, you could probably be talked off that position by somebody that's like, well, hey, there's actually they're actually going through a family thing right now. My uncle has a cancerous brain tumor. And so it was like really bad for a minute. And now he's getting treatment. It's a little bit better. But so the whole family kind of like reconvened. Everybody was in college and they kind of just came back to live with him and be with him. And yes, that's like an example of, hey, I get to see what my priorities are. And I would say that I think that their priorities are in a good place, right? Because I think family probably is more important, but whatever. I don't need to say that to them. I don't need to say like dancing's not important to you. The whole point was just that the idea of learning things transjectively and trusting that there's truth to be found in the sharing of like the same experience, but also of different experiences. And anyway, that's where my mind went to, because when it comes to Brennan Manning, he has a totally different life that he lived from me, but at the same time, like I think the way that I think of it is he lived in relationship with God, or to God, just by existing. Right. This is why I think that you can find truth in Nietzsche, who's not going to be providing these level of like deep spiritual insights because he didn't have communion and fellowship with God in the same way that Brennan Manning did. And I don't even know, like maybe he could have been saved. I'm just saying, like, Brennan Manning spent a lot of focused time with God, and so he's got a cool insight there, and he can offer that to me in the same way that Nietzsche spent a lot of focused time on certain problems, and he's got a lot of cool insight to offer me there. But these experiences are neither, they're not just subjective, and they're not just objective, right? And so you can't just say like, well, that's objectively false or that's objectively true, even though there can be those truths. I'm not saying that either.
I remember having a conversation. I don't remember who it was with, actually, which is not very common. It's not often that I remember a conversation, but I don't remember who it was. Like, we're talking years ago, but
Maybe it was
I
an
don't
angel.
know. But someone's asking me something like, I don't know. They're talking about their children, and it was after it was in response to hearing an aspect of my story, and and they were worried about their kids, and um, just hoping that they don't have to, suffer. That's not how they put it. It's like have to wanting them to not have to ever stumble or something. Like, uh, and then they said like, I don't remember how they even phrased the question, but something along the lines of like, "Do you think that's even a possibility?" And I said, "I don't. I don't think that. I think it's necessary. I think you have to stumble. Like that's just the only way to understand God's grace is through the stumbling." And so the way that you learn about God's grace is through your stumbling. And it's one thing of like, yeah, I don't want anyone to ever experience all the hell that I experienced through my stumblings. But at the same time, that was the way that I came to know. Now, is that the way? I think that's that transjective truth thing where it's like, this was just the way that I came to this understanding. Had I not have gone through that, I would not have this understanding though. So it's like that bittersweet, like God redeems it. God redeems it all. And so with that being said, I think there's an element with this transjective thought. If I'm understanding the expression correctly, it's like even with Brennan Manning saying that, it's like only way for him to really be able to say that was through him devoting time of monitoring his spiritual growth. So it's like there's redeemable elements, but he's expressing like through my time of thinking that the monitoring of the spiritual growth was a discipline that I needed to subject myself to for the sake of growth. I grew from that. But it's kind of like a chicken and egg type of situation where it's like, would he have come to that conclusion had he not gone through a season of monitoring his life? Like, the whole hindsight 2020. That's the whole thing about the Ecclesiastes book. It's like he had to go through all that for him to express such deep truths. And yes, there is a truth to be extracted that could spare me from like, uh, self-righteous effort, or spare me from religiosity, or spare me from wasting my time, really spare me from doubting God. It can maybe it can induce more trust in God. That's what I get from the quote too. It induces me to be like, oh wow, yeah, he's the author and finisher of my faith. He is the Lord of my salvation. He's the Lord of my spiritual growth. Like I don't need to monitor it like looking over Jesus' shoulder like, hold on, like like it's like, yeah, I don't need to monitor my spiritual growth like as if in the sense of like double checking Jesus' work or something, because that's like I'm trying to micromanage Jesus. It's funny I can even say this too, because I've been thinking about micromanaging a lot as well. We just had a project. I was telling you a little bit about it before we started the podcast, but we just did this bulletin board project, like a little art project with my class for the last 2 weeks, and it's been it's been a really difficult thing. But I think what has been the hardest was one, helping them not micromanage each other, where it's like, no, you have your thing, you just mind your own business. That's not. There's some who are trying to micromanage others and like, oh, I don't think you should have painted it like that, like blah blah blah. It's like, no, you paint your thing. They gotta paint their thing. And then even me myself, like I start to like, I don't know. And then I catch myself like, I'm sorry, I'm micromanaging you. Like I'm even doing it too. Like how much we just micromanage, especially when the process is, like when we're in the process and I'm monitoring this bulletin board. And then like we finally get stuff up on the board after like a week of striving. And when it's up there, I'm like, we are not gonna this is not at all what any of us envisioned. We're all kind of like, this is not good. Like, but just trusting the process. Like we have what we have. Like we gotta just keep going. Like with that being said, it's funny talking about this, like the monitoring the progress. Like when a thing's in the process, it's like, this looks weird. Like, what are you doing? Wait, hold on. I don't know if we're ever gonna get to what we all had this vision of what we're trying to do, because we're trying to imitate a certain painting. And so, but then when we finally get, because they all broke off in their own teams. And so when they finally brought all their stuff together and we put on the board, it's like, what have we all done? Like this is all of our us trying to express the vision that we all came to a common understanding of what we're striving for. And then once we finally start getting on the board, it's like, this is not good. And if we start to just respond to the criticism of ourselves, our own self-criticism, as well as criticizing others' contributions, it's like if we let that drive the ship of progress, the criticism and the judgment and the analysis, trying to respond to when I see it, that doubt that like, I don't think this is good. If I let that steer the ship, like I'm never going to get to the finished product. But at the same time, it's just like it's just like it could stunt growth, I think, when you let self-criticism, self-analysis dictate your course.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the full thought is here, but that just triggered for me some stuff that I've been reading about from I think it's The Anatomy of the Soul of Shame by Kurt Thompson.
Oh,
He's like a psychiatrist, Christian, and so
Anatomy
he
of the
did a lot of.
Soul of Shame.
Yeah, I feel like it might just be The Soul of Shame, and then there's another, The Anatomy of Shame. That could have been a different book. There's definitely two books on shame, but he did a lot of work because there's a lot of like uh neuroscience on shame that he knows because of his work, and then connecting the dots to like spiritual practices and even just like concepts of restoration and forgiveness and all of these things. He just had so many stories of people that their lives were affected by shame that he wanted to write this book. And I haven't read all the way through. He gets a little like sciency, and it's just not easy to read. I usually read at night before I go to bed. Uh Though I have had more time. I should get back into it in the daytime. But anyway, uh it's what it struck what you just said struck with me, the idea that uh so much of our life is dictated to us by the shame that we have. And so
Mm,
like that's sort of the importance of doing the work, is what they say in therapy. The reason that it's important to do that work, and the same is true in, uh spiritual, whatever, discipleship slash your relationship with Jesus. The reason it's so important is because you can't necessarily move forward, and moving forward is important, like we were saying. Like it's not petty to get past these things in you. But the reason we micromanage, and the reason that we judge and criticize and even like self-criticize, is
mm,
because of a fear of being shamed, and that comes from experience. um I think it can even come from, well, I don't know. I was gonna say I think it could even come from like your conscience, but that conflicts with some different stuff that I think about that. We've talked about the book Island by Aldous Huxley, I think,
mhm.
a little bit. Um, yeah, the whole idea is like just an island that's run by these weirdo sort of syncretists, spiritual syncretists, uh and there's just people on the island that are like perfect because it's an island. There's no outside cultural, religious
Mhm.
influences, so they're sort of like pure, and the idea is a little bit like that. Which I'm not 100% on board with that, because I think there's definitely an element of original sin or something like that. I don't that's its own complicated thing, but yeah, just going back to shame, it's so weird that these are very common. Like you run into micromanagers pretty much no matter where you are. Like,
Mhm.
uh, I try to commend people when they are good delegators, because it's such a good, like, I want that person to think that that's the thing they have to offer other people. Like, this is the thing you actually get right the most, over and above anything that you're recognized for. This should be what you're recognized for, because it's so difficult. Because the reality is, like, you're participating in a sort of authority role, and so then like James's sixth grade class just put a bunch of crap on the board, and now it's like, what
Yeah.
the heck is James
Yeah,
teaching these kids
especially
there?
when you see, because it's in the main building and there's 7 other boards, like, first and second grades got theirs, and it's mostly like all the other projects look super neat, and then mine just like, yeah, it's you also got that too. The kids are looking over their shoulders, look at the other boards like, "What have we done? Ours is not organized." Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and so okay, so there's interesting stuff here, because there is such a thing as spiritual growth, right? This is the context that we're speaking of this in.
Mhm,
There is such a thing as a well crafted corkboard presentation. And then what is it saying about you? That's not that important, but it's like, do you want to do a good job of it? Sure, all of that's great. But then how do you go about that? Because there's a way of going about it where you crush the creativity of the students, and you say, this is what it means to make a good presentation, and then you make your presentation through them. That's one way to do it, and maybe you could win a prize. Great. but you've
Mhm.
ruined the opportunity of what it could have been for these kids. In my opinion, I guess, like, it depends on what it is. If it's like rocket science or something, you don't want to you don't want to like skip over safety protocols, let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
But even that, I give that caveat, and then we get back to spiritual growth. It's like all of a sudden you've got a list of things that are rocket science, and then we can't hand this off. You better do it a certain way because you get nervous about it. But I think the freedom that you have in with a relationship with Jesus, like a absolute trust that He is.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm gonna say, I always want to reclaim these words. I'm gonna say sovereign, but I don't mean that He controls. I don't think that that's how He does it. So in imitation of Him, I think what you can do uh, is take responsibility for your class's presentation in a way that allows their creativity to flourish, allows them to participate in it, and that in itself is the reward. And so then you get into teleology here. Like, what are you aiming at? What are you desiring to produce in these students? Is it just you just want to dominate the 2025, 2026 Christmas corkboard? Like, if
Yeah,
that's
and get a
really
hot
what's
fudge sundae when we get back, hot fudge sundae bar.
yeah, yeah. If that's really your goal, then go for it. Crush them and get them that prize. But what is the lesson that's teaching? What is the result of the person that's creating? And even like some of the examples from Kurt Thompson are examples of like raising your hand in class and not having the right answer, and that crushes somebody the rest of their life. They can't get a promotion because they can't ask because they're not 100% sure, and they have this in the back of their you know DNA at this point. Like, it's just been iterated over and over in their mind, and they haven't healed that. And like, whatever, if people poo poo that and say get over it, like grow up, but the reality is, if it's affecting the way that you act in the world to that degree, then I think it's significant enough to deal with. Like,
Mhm.
um anyway, so getting too specific here, so broadening out a little bit. I think that what God does is empower us to live our lives. This is the freedom in Christ, where it is for freedom that you have been set free. What does that mean? How does that even play out in the way that we play church together? And I don't mean that. I mean that we participate in church together. Like, play church is an expression. That means you're not doing it right. I mean, you participate. I'm part of the body, you're part of the body. How do we do that together under His authority? And a lot of people will say, they'll stress obedience, right? And that's sort of like a rigorous approach. Like, whatever He says, I'm going to do it. That's great. That's a super important part of life. Like, you could say, I've got final say on this. Like, you're going to put that on the board, or you're not going to put that on the board based on what I say. Great. But then there's also like creativity. There's a little bit of like the parable of the talents here. Like I'm giving this to you, so you get to make it the best that it can be according to you. And I don't know. Like, are you willing to risk it to make a mistake? Are you willing to try? Are you willing to participate? I mean, going back to the initial quote, like, are you willing to swim in the river? Like, are you willing to actually experience what this is like and go through it?
Mhm.
Um, you don't even know. It could be cold. It could be muddy. It could be like that experience could not be smooth and perfect and pleasurable, comfortable, but it
Mhm.
could be an experience. It will be. It will be an experience. And so, what
Yeah.
what is the goal? I guess is sort of where I'm going with this. Is like, what are we looking to produce in people? Uh, and and maybe what should we be looking for? I hate throwing
Mhm.
should around, but
Yeah, and the other sides of that expression too was the whole like walking with bare feet earlier in the spring, staying out later in the fall. I was like, as I was thinking about that, I'm like, I mean, those are just things that like you just don't do because, I mean, it hurts to walk when it's really cold. Early on in the spring, normally there's some snow on the ground, like late in the fall, the sun goes down super, like even right now, I've been thinking about, even I was thinking about that. I'm like, go out later in the fall. I'm like, it gets dark super soon in the fall, like that means it's like, like you're in the middle of the night pretty soon. And so you had to think about these things. Like that's the other sides of it too, where these type of expressions, these are, they are a challenge to the status quo. That's the driving I want to say spirit, and it's deemed as rebellious. I think some see like that is rebellious. We don't walk barefoot early on the spring. We don't go out late in the fall because it's dark, because it's cold. We don't not use a raft because like all these things that like, and we especially monitor our spiritual growth because uh you lose control if otherwise. And it's like, yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's one way to look at it. You lose control in the sense of like, and then you could say that's anarchy, that's rebellion. That's because if you're not in control, who is?
That's why I brought up sovereignty. That's 100% why. Because God is.
Yeah.
And if yeah, because if you don't believe that truly, and I hesitated to bring up sovereignty because a lot of people think of it very deterministically, and I'm not 100% opposed to that. I just think it's a little bit more both and, like I think there's some give and take on our interpretations of God's sovereignty. And certainly the amount of delegating that he does, like inclusion of us in the process. But it is to trust his authority, to like participating in life freely is to trust his authority. To say, I don't know what is going to happen if I do X, Y, or Z here, but I do know that it's going to be okay, and whatever. If your situation is such that you truly think you need a word from God, he's speaking directly to you, then go for it. Like if you even need the spiritual encouragement from your relationship with him through prayer, go for it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but I do think there's something wrong with like, I need to play it safe here. I need to put my shoes on earlier in the spring, like even earlier. I'll just keep them on or keep them on later, right? We're only going out in the summertime, only when it's comfortable. It's like, it's very poetic language, but I love that you picked up on it too, because the idea is there are thrilling experiences to be had. And these are just very fundamental barefoot experiences, but you get to experience that based on your willingness to sort of just color outside the lines a little bit. That's the way I'm interpreting this. Like if everyone says, April 1st that's the first day you can take your shoes off and go outside, then try it out, sometime in late March. Just give it a shot.
Right at midnight. Yeah. Start there. Yeah. Start right at like 11:30. Like no. Well, and that's the thing too, is that when you start saying this, it's like, well, you're pushing it. You're playing with fire here, which I mean, that's, yeah. I find it funny as we're talking about naked feet and then playing with fire. It's like, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. It's like, this could get out of hand real quick. We can't control that. It's like, yeah, that's the tragic nature of recognizing that you're not God. Is that that means you have to actually like, oh, like I'm not driving. I'm at the whim of God. I'm at his whim.
Wow. Yeah. That's really that is definitely essential to this. Like, to broaden that idea out to something more general, but like on a societal level, that's why we smooth things over, because we want to be able to grasp as much as we possibly can, right?
And control,
things are
predict,
exactly,
anticipate,
and be God in as many situations as possible. Which is maybe overstating it, but it's just, let's say, have no need for God, have no need for his authority in every situation. You say, I've got my climate control, I've got my bed, I've got my car, I've got my job, I've got my whatever. That stands in for the experiential relationship of faith with God, or faith in God. Yeah, and that's horrifying. As someone who's quite comfortable right now in my jammy pants, I'm a little uncomfortable by that idea.
Yeah, I don't remember what we were even talking about with the kids, but I found myself in this expression talking about how like I just been thinking about how crazy it is that we get in the car with somebody. It's like that's wild. Like, um, and I was just like, those you have those stories, and that's why we have stories. Even with all these. Oh yeah, that one time went out where I didn't have shoes on early spring is like you're gonna talk about that day for the rest of your life because I was like, well, I learned why we wear shoes. Like sure, I'll put my shoes back on if I find out I don't want to. It's not sustainable, yeah, but I had an experience. Like anyways, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but
Hmm.
I tried it and like I wouldn't be I don't anyways. So with the whole getting in the car thing, it's like those times where you realize how crazy it is to you get in the car with somebody when someone starts driving like wild. And you're just like, "Oh, wait, like oh, let me put the seatbelt." That time when you actually get consciously aware of like, oh wait, this is insane, and you're at the whim of, and they have free will, and you are subjected to their free will.
Yeah.
That
You're
time
like,
where
thank
like,
God there's this little tiny handle I can hang on to.
yeah, no, exactly. But like, and I even likened it like. I've had times in my life where I got in the car with a drunk driver. Well, there's been times in life where I've been the drunk driver. Anyways, I don't really remember those times very well, but praise God that he spared my life. But and the times where I got in the car and I realized like, oh, you're not sober. Like you seem like you're chill. I got in the car and the next thing like, oh, he kind of went over the line a little bit. And then he just like, snapped and just like, stop, let me out. I'm getting out. And so that type of thing where it's like how that could be like who you allow in the driver's seat, it's like someone who's completely intoxicated. Or someone's actually sober and is sober mindedly, they start going crazy. It's like at the same time, I feel like God drives in a way where it's like, this is terrifying, but he knows exactly what he's doing. Like if you were in a car with like a racer or something, like he knows how to drift and going through all these crazy maneuvers. He's in full control, but it's just like, this is terrifying. And I think that's a type of thing too. Like when God is driving, it's an exhilaratingly terrifying experience because it's like one, I'm not in control. Two, this is moving really fast and in maneuvers that I didn't even know cars can even move this way. And three, I'm praise God that no one else drives like this because everything would break. But the fact that God, he's God, like the car just maneuvered that way and that was good because all that God does is good, like that type of transjective type of thing. It's like, if everyone drove that way, yeah, there'd be a bunch of collision, but God has authority. So the way that he's maneuvering the car right now, that's the way that he maneuvered. And that's the way that I experienced that part of the journey because
What you're making me think is a there's definitely a newness to the things that God does at almost every turn. And it's not that God only operates in the new. It's not that everything new is of him. I don't think that. I'm certainly more open to it than some people, and so this is the side of it that I'm presenting. But I think that God doesn't often repeat himself step by step, except to maybe add a twist. There's a plot twist. There's a different ending. It's very thematic in a sort of narrative way. If you look back, you can say, "Wow, God did that before, and I didn't do this, or it didn't turn out that way. But this time it turned out a different way and it was better, or it was what I hoped it was the first time." Or yeah, I don't know. I don't have a specific example of this, but like the idea that God is not often caught repeating himself in the sense that in the way that you would think he would according to our metrics, right? We think of things as sort of like a chart up and to the right. We need to be growing, we need to be succeeding, we need to be getting better in some capacity, we need to be more efficient, all of these things. It's like God just kind of like moves at his own pace. It could be fast or slow, it could be complicated or simple, and all of these things we get to experience through participation with him. And then we get to share these experiences back to the transjective of like, wow, yeah, that was so different than what I expected, what has happened before. But it was really illuminating to look at this through a different set of experiences or through a different outcome or whatever. And that's fascinating to me because I think it puts into view for me the way that I relate with God, because I like recently I've been going through some of the emotions that I've had about the way that things have happened in my life. And it feels a little like Job, maybe, like uh at least the whole book of Job. Like some people in that are saying, well, God's doing this for this reason, and I might be doing that to God in some ways in my life. And so uh or ascribing motive and intent to God is a dangerous game.
Mm,
um I think a little bit of what we've been talking about too is like trusting the motive. It's
mm,
unchanging. He loves you. And so then as you
that's
navigate
good.
things, uh there's a tendency to be like, well, he did this, so we're going to do this to, meet up at the same place again, right? Like revival always works this way, right? There are some denominations that, like, they don't just pray for revival like as an afterthought. It's like, we're having a revival. It's happening tonight, Wednesday night at 7 p.m. That's what's happening. It's like, okay, hopefully that would be great, but I don't I don't know how consistently that takes place, because it's an it's not a mechanism. You don't operate this machine and, whatever you put in, you get out. It's like it's a relationship. What are we doing today? That attitude is much more, I don't know. I want to say conducive, but it's just much more, it maps onto it the same way as I experience it. That's what I would say.
Hmm.
Like, God is doing something. I don't know what it is, way more often than I do. And so then I think we get in trouble when we think, well, he did this before, so this is how he likes it, or those types of things.
Yeah. I think that's the element of with the whole monitor, and it's like I'm watching, and then I'm gonna let what I see dictate how I respond, and that's literally the exact opposite of walking by faith. We not walk by what we see, but we walk by faith, and so it's like not letting what I see dictate. I love that you said that about trusting the motive, not letting what I see dictate what I think God is doing or how He feels about me, even. Um, But also in terms of talking about the new thing that God does and all that, but at the same time, it's all in the same in keeping with the same spirit. Which that's
Yes,
the crazy thing. It's like
that's the
there,
motive.
yeah, yeah. It's with the same motive, it's the same spirit, with the same character, same nature, same expression, um, but expressing in a new, manifesting in a new way. But it's in keeping with all all ways that He's ever expressed Himself.
Yeah,
That's all like
yeah,
testing the spirits type of thing that is a
absolutely,
First John.
absolutely. Yeah, I think there's grave importance in what you're saying. Like I tried to caveat in the beginning because I know that it's not just the novel.
Hmm.
That for me that's a huge thing, because I'm like, whatever I am, 95 on the openness trait, on the big 5 personality thing. Like uh I love new stuff, and I want to play with it and see what values in it, and it's like, well, great, let's try to do this. And even, well, it's just a common human thing. Like, oh, I've been doing this workout for this, or this diet or whatever. People get bored so easily of whatever it is that they're habitually doing. Do not tire of doing good, right? Like, um, there is a propensity in the human being to just sort of glaze over at the things that you do consistently, and that you don't want to throw out anything that's good. You just want to like add on, and to the extent that you can, you just want to add on something. Oh, that's new, but it's good, and I'll keep doing it. Like, yeah, and I think some people, like I said, I think some people struggle on the other end of the spectrum. But I don't want to be like purporting this. If it's new, it's good. I don't think that, right?
Hmm.
Because there's a possibility that something new is misunderstood just as much as something old is misunderstood, and you do have to, what you said, test the spirits. I love the connection there between spirit and motive. I think, like, Peterson's work does a lot of, it focuses a lot on animating spirits. It's even the way that he sort of constructs an understanding of the psychological elements of spiritual warfare is like you're possessed by the spirit of anger. I don't anybody that knows Peterson knows something that he said about that. It's like, yeah, all of the same characteristics are there. We can identify what is moving this person is the spirit of anger. It's not necessarily the person. It's the angry version of this person. And so that's very strange, but also it's identifiable. And this is the same thing with the spirit of love that you're saying. There's an identifiable spirit of God that you can pick out as you observe what's taking place. And even as you participate with it, because I think more often than not, we are participating with spiritual entities, and we can recognize it and repent when we should, and we can recognize it and keep going when we're participating with the spirit of love.
Yeah.
Because the other outcome of some of these like caveats could be, well, I won't participate in anything. Like I only participate in what the group says is safe, and that's obviously not what I'm for. But I'm definitely in the camp of like, oops, that was not a good spirit.
Yeah. No, seriously. Yeah. I think there's something to be said about situational. I think that's why that's the first thing that came to my mind. It's like you have to keep the situation or even the point of life that these words are being spoken of. Like that's like with Brennan Manning at the end of his life, and
Mm.
uh, but I think that's the thing too. It's like we were so prone to try to.
Yes. I'm idealistic because I'm young. And so I think, well, why not? Let's try.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that is, some of the things I try could work and be good. And the downfall of that is that some of the things I try will not be all that they're cracked up to be, according to me, because I haven't experienced them. So I think, wow, that's amazing. But through experience, I can come to the point where I transjectively with my elders understand, aha, not a good idea. Like I've
Yeah.
had this experience with some, just very simple example would be uh, a wanton disregard for the guarding of my heart, let's say. So I've loved lots of things to an extent that is very destructive to me. I don't know that I loved, like, let's say, the drugs that I've done, but I certainly loved the experience to the point where the consequences were irrelevant to me, and uh, that's not a safe place to be living. But I got there by saying, what do these people know? And some of them knew from experience, and some of them did not know from experience. I definitely didn't listen to either of them, So
Yeah. Yeah.
it wasn't. I was getting lots of advice at that time in my life, and I could have benefited from it. But now I know, and now we share an understanding. Like, aha, yes, that is true.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing too. Is like all things that are worth knowing are learned through experience. It's just whether or not you trust someone's testimony of what they experienced. So,
Yeah,
or even trust you understand what you've experienced too. And that's the other thing. That your own personal experience or someone else's testifying what they've experienced and what they've learned through that experience. And anyways, ultimately, we all only really learn through experience. That's the
yeah,
point I'm really trying to
yeah.
make.
That's really interesting too. I was going to go back to two things that I thought. So one is it feels very introspective, the measuring of your spiritual growth, right? He said, I would not waste one more second uh, tracking, what was it? Monitoring my
Mm.
spiritual growth. And that feels very introspective. It's not bad to introspect. This is a podcast of introspection, to be sure. But
Mm.
there is actually, I know Manning's writing quite well, and he several times across many books will use the term navel gazing to describe this behavior in himself. And I think the reason that we navel gaze is because of shame, right? So I'm kind of blending my two ideas here, so hopefully it's not ruining it. But we navel gaze because we're afraid of making a mistake that embarrasses ourselves, that reveals the fact that we're not God, we're not perfect, we don't have it all together, and we don't know what's going to happen on the other side of that. In fact, we've experienced some bad stuff usually that's happened on the other side of revealing that, and so we don't want to do that. And so we're very self-focused. This is being conscious. And so when you live your life in a self-conscious way, you self-censor. And there's some things that you should probably censor. That's fine. That's being mature. But there's no freedom in that, and there's no transjective truth in that, right? Because if you're not participating, if you're not doing the transfer of your subjective experience because you're worried about, like, I don't know, am I seeing this right? Like, there's an element of humility that is important here, but I think more often than not, it's not humility, it's self-preservation. And so this is the idea of trusting the sovereignty of God to sort of stand in for the need for self-preservation. I think I've even said that on the podcast about like survival instincts aren't bad, but they're not great either, because they sort of can get in the place of, like, well, that people think that this is where the fear of public speaking, it's the number one fear when people are polled. They're terrified of public speaking because that's the easiest way to get kicked out of the group. You say something wrong and you're either discounted, disrespected, like people lose respect for you because you're an idiot, you made a fool of yourself, or you say something that's heretical to the tribal understanding of truth, and then you're actually kicked out.
Canceled.
You don't get to be a part of the tribe. Canceled. And the reason that cancellation is so biologically, like, important, and there's a little, like, whatever, is because you need people. You need people to survive, and this is still true to this day. You can't survive on your own. You won't make it very long. And so with that, like, you got to keep your job, right? You got to keep your friends. And so any of these things, you don't want to just put those up willy-nilly. And so public speaking is one of these things where we find the lever of shame sort of dictating our actions. And so I was thinking, like, what's the opposite of that? It's extrospection, which is kind of a useless term. It means the observation of things outside of yourself. That's good. It's a better thing. But what we're really proposing here is sort of like participating in life outside of yourself. And that's what we were describing a little bit earlier. And the term that has just been in my mind and I've been using recently is in relationship, you must have reciprocal opening. It's another Vervaeke term, but it's like you must be vulnerable to another person and them to you to really participate with one another. And it's sort of like this beautiful, like, if you think of, it's silly, but like clams, they have beautiful pearls on the inside, or oysters, whatever, some sort of shellfish. If they're closed, they're kind of like whatever and barnacly, but they're protected. But if they open, you get to see, whoa, that's really cool. And that's really who you are. That's really who the clam is. It's not the shell on the outside, but it's what's on the inside. And I don't know if that lands, but the introspection will prevent that. You'll say, oh, I don't know what of me on the inside will necessarily offend this other person, or even just, like, not be up to their standard, and I will be judged by them. And the necessary conditions for intimate relationship are this reciprocal opening. And so, I think shame stands in the way of that very often, that participation in the world outside of yourself, because there's a way of participating in the world where you never go outside of yourself, and I think that, or you never open. And so I think that it's a really important part of this monitoring of your spiritual growth. It's like, not only is it maybe not quite the right way of growing spiritually, like my spiritual growth is excellent, but you're always monitoring it. That's not a great thing. Because you're not participating in the world. But there's another way of being, like, ashamed of your spirit. Like, it's just not happening. This is a mess and I can't open up. And often I think in my life, as I open and other people are reciprocally opening to me, there exists the conditions necessary for the possibility of true growth, in me and even in them. And so it's like both ways. You need to be open to afford the possibility of growth. It's sort of another analogy might be like the seed needs to die in the ground and then it can grow into the thing. Like,
One of my students asked me about, again, I don't really remember why the conversation came up, but asked me about social anxiety.
Hmm.
I think I made some type of comment about it, and then she asked me, like, what if you do have social anxiety? And then the conversation went to, it was interesting because we talked about the fear of the Lord. And then I had never really thought of the fear of the Lord like this, but just kind of in the moment, I just give all glory to God that even as I was thinking about it, like in the moment, like, because I was talking about fear of man, I'm like, well, what is the fear of the Lord? And just in this conversation, it kind of just like, well, fear of the Lord is like to be deeply concerned with the judgments of God on my action, like present action, not even just actions necessarily, but it's like I'm deeply concerned what He thinks about what I did or say or am about to do, and that's what we do with the fear of man. It's like I'm deeply concerned about your judgment upon how I'm about to express myself. If I let that, it's kind of the same with that micromanaging. It's the shame thing, exactly that. It's a shame thing. So if I'm deeply caught up with it's whose judgment like that am I most concerned about and worried about appeasing, being on the good graces of this agent's judgment call, or even this society's. When it's the fear of man, there's so many. It could be the collective. But fear of the Lord is like I'm deeply concerned with His judgment upon what I say and do, and what I have done too as well. And so just thinking about that with fear of the Lord, how much and the fact that He doesn't shame me. I mean, that's why the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but it's the love of God that sets you free from all fear. And even he who is fear of God is not fear of punishment. Fear of the Lord is really, I'm deeply concerned about His judgments, because if I do something that He judges poorly, it hurts His heart, and I love Him. I don't want to do that to Him. Anyways, with this whole shame thing and self-evaluation, as you're talking about it, I was thinking about I've always wondered about this it's come up even in this too, the seeming contradiction that Paul, and maybe it's just because I haven't spent much time with it, but I've thought of it often and read through it often, but it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, at the beginning of chapter 4. At the end of chapter 2, he says, stop deceiving yourselves. If you think you are wise by this world's standards, you need to become a fool to be truly wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. As the scriptures say, He traps the wise in the snare of their own cleverness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that He knows they are worthless. So don't boast about following a particular human leader. For everything belongs to you, whether Paul or Apollos or Peter or the world or life and death or the present and the future. Everything belongs to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. So look at Apollos and me as mere servants of Christ, who have been put in charge of explaining God's mysteries. Now, a person who is put in charge as a manager must be faithful. As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you. I love it. I love how he just goes for it. As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. NASB or like New King James, I don't even evaluate myself, Paul says. As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you, by any human authority. I don't even trust my own evaluation on myself. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord Himself who will examine me and decide, that's like the chips will fall where they lie. Like time will tell. Wisdom will be made known by her children. That's what Jesus says, like, and even as you're talking about the exospection. It's like kind of judging by just like the fruit of whatever it is, whatever thought or conviction you're acting upon. If it's wisdom, if it's godly, you'll tell by its fruit. You'll know by its fruit. It means you don't know in the moment. Like, I don't know if it's going to work out. Like, time will tell. And that's the thing about time. You reap what you sow. If you sow into the spirit, it will reap dividends of more and more life. It will be part of cultivating faithfulness in the land. Like, that's part of our calling, is to cultivate faithfulness unto the Lord. And so there's even what Paul's saying here, the way he lived, he's like, God will eventually examine me and decide. This is kind of before we get into the whole Bema Seat conversation in Corinthians. Bema Seat meaning the judgment that believers are subjected to, which is your works are judged, and whether or not they were of the Lord, they will remain. They'll pass through the fire, which is actually what they did in the Old Testament. Whenever maybe I'm conflating. I would have to go back and restudy it. But there's a thing about how they would burn something after they conquer. I think, I don't quote me on this. This is where the whole teaching thing is. I know how people get if you misquote scripture. I'm going to get beheaded and then burned at the stake. But if I understand correctly, if I remember correctly, that's really what it is. And whenever they got spoils from the war, they put it through the fire, and whatever remained through the fire, they're able to keep. And it was like actually valuable. Everything else would be burned away. So it's kind of a similar type of thing too. There is a precedent for that in the Old Testament.
That's really funny. Like fake Rolexes and stuff. They're just, none of it made it through. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. Imagine that's how we tested. That's how because you have to subject it to the fire. Like, is this real? Let me throw it in the fire. Like, no, please don't. Oh, it's because you're fake. But anyways, that's kind of where this conversation leads. But the whole is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide. Meaning he hasn't decided yet, which is interesting how he's talking about this. So don't make judgment about anyone ahead of time before the Lord returns, for he will bring our darkest secrets to light and will reveal our private motives. He will reveal our motives. The last day will reveal what motivations, what spirit. I love that we're talking about this even. Then God will give to each one whatever praise is due. And then, so anyways, the other side of it though, is at the end of 2 Corinthians, which I'm not going to go into the context of this, but it's the last chapter. This is Paul's final advice. And he says, because they're thinking he's not a real. It's funny he says this. I don't care about your evaluation of me, and then he writes all of 2 Corinthians because they're evaluating him as not an apostle, not actually authoritative from God, not the real deal. And so I've always been just like, what's going on here? He seems like he's deeply concerned about their evaluation of him. He said that in 1 Corinthians at the beginning, but now here we are. This is the third time I'm coming to visit you. As the scriptures say, the facts of every case must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. I've already warned those who have been sinning when I was there on my second visit. Now I again warn them and all others, just as I did before. The next time I will not spare them. I will give you all the proof you want that Christ speaks through me. Christ is not weak when he deals with you. He is powerful among you. Although he was crucified in weakness, he now lives by the power of God. We too are weak, just as Christ was. But when we deal with you, we will be alive with him and will have God's power. And he says, examine yourselves to see if your faith is genuine. Test yourselves. Surely you know that Jesus Christ is among you. If not, you have failed the test of genuine faith. As you test yourselves, I hope you will recognize that we have not failed the test of apostolic authority. We pray to God that you will not do what is wrong by refusing our correction. I hope we won't need to demonstrate our authority when we arrive. Do the right thing before we come, even if that makes it look like we have failed to demonstrate our authority. For we cannot oppose the truth, but we must always stand for the truth. We are glad to seem weak if it helps show that you are actually strong. We pray that you will become mature. It's a deep thing going on here, but this whole thing, examine yourselves and see if your faith is genuine. Test yourselves, and if you don't pass the test, because you're and so there's even this whole thing of, we talk about even at communion, we pull from a Corinthian letter. I'm pretty sure it's 1 Corinthians, where it's talking about you're taking communion in an improper manner, and you gotta really come before the Lord and so there is a tension here of this whole testing yourself, but at the same time, there's the navel gazing side where it's and how are we to tease out the distinction here? Because there is a need to test yourself. Obviously, that is a um, to subject yourself to, well, to the scrutiny of, and even to the apostles. I mean, that's what's going on here too. It's like, um, we've been reading through Proverbs quite a bit, and I've been recognizing how much it talks about like hating correction. Those who hate correction are stupid, but those who love correction gain knowledge and are wise. Like this whole, how much it talks about correction and reproof, and even when wisdom cries out in the streets, because you scorned my rebuke. It's like my reproof. Like these things at the same time. It's like there can be there is that tension even what Paul's saying. There is I don't think it's an utter contradiction. I think it's getting at the same thing here, but how are we to make a distinction between testing yourself and then, monitoring your spiritual growth, or whatever, however Brennan Manning put it.
Yeah, I think I want to offer an outlet here. I think I've been just recognizing that the end result that you're aiming at, so your teleology, is the thing that is important here. I don't, because it's almost like
motive?
intention. The mode, yeah. What you're aiming at is what's dictating the way that you do this, because monitoring spiritual growth doesn't sound like a bad thing. And maybe in a perfect scenario, it's not a bad thing. But Manning is just saying, I would participate in my life freely trusting God's work of spiritually growing me more and not worry about it myself, because that's been his experience. All of those hours worrying, it's like, why, Jesus says, why would you worry? You can't even add an inch to your height. Actually, fun fact, now we can with surgery, we can do that. But not by worrying, right? You can't do it by worrying. And so it's a good point. Like you can't change the things that you're worried about by worrying about them. And so when you're monitoring your spiritual growth, what is the purpose of that? And that's what I'm getting at with like the introspection, because introspection's not bad. It might not even be the perfect word for what I'm talking about. Like navel gazing captures it a little bit better, because it's more about, you're worried, you're concerned about how you're appearing in the world, but how are you actually showing up? What are you actually participating in? And Manning is just saying, like, a great rule of thumb that he's developed from his life is like, I would have just done more things. I just would have participated way more than worried about, like whatever. It's Thursday afternoon. I'm going to go on a bike ride, or I'm going to make sure I memorize the 23rd Psalm. Like, there's value in memorizing that psalm, but there is certainly a lot less value if it's just to appear wise or holy or spiritual or any of those things, or even to yourself. Like if you've got a secret scorecard that you're keeping, like that, there's no benefit in that, but there is benefit in knowing that that's true, right? And the benefit is that you get to go out in the spring with your shoes off a little bit earlier than the other people that are worried about their feet, right? Because it's not even about that. It's not really about that. It's about the people that don't go outside because they're worried about their spiritual condition.
But what about the parts of the expression of like jettisoning? That means like to throw out, right? Like to throw out your parachute, throw out your raft. What about those expressions?
Yeah. So I the way I would interpret that is like that you are perfectly prepared in this moment to interact with God in any experience, and you don't need those other things. Because I think all of his metaphors here, images here, are in light of this spiritual growth. And so I think that he's saying I would have participated at a spiritual level in the world, and at a physical level, and I don't think those are separable. So it makes sense, right? Like I would have physically participated in the world, and I would have been spiritually present to each of those experiences, without worrying about my gear, my kit, right? I'm not insufficient because I don't have all of the tools that somebody else has. I'm not inexperienced to the point where it would be, you know, dangerous to spend time with God or something like that, you know?
I forgot why I asked that. I feel like I interrupted what you're saying, but I asked that because I thought maybe because you're using just the example of with the going out without shoes part of the
Hmm.
metaphor. But I was wondering how the jettisoning uh the the things tie in with the participatory um nature as well, because that's another thing that sounds scary. I mean,
Mm.
to jettison. If I understand what jettison, maybe I don't fully. Maybe there's a different definition of jettison.
Yeah,
But
it's like throw out, get rid of.
yeah, yeah. So the jettison, the parachute, and the raft, and what was the other thing? Raincoat, umbrella,
Those are your fail safes, your defense
which
mechanisms.
which I do often actually, and I find myself. A lot of people always tease me about like because I
Yes.
always I go on like these hikes and I don't have a water bomb and Crocs and I'm like just take on a trail and then find out it's 6 miles long and then I'm out of water but it
Yeah.
worked
Can I
out. I
borrow some
didn't.
water?
Yeah, yeah, it worked out, dude. I didn't die. Uh, but yeah, maybe that's what he's talking about. Just that whole like it's gonna work out. Like I'm not gonna wait until all the conditions are met to embark on a journey. I'm
Yeah.
not to make
Yeah.
provisions for yourself. That's the whole thing. To make provisions. I always thought about that. Like there's that expression in Galatians, I think, like make no provisions for the flesh. I
Mm.
always thought that was interesting. Like making provisions. It's just like to plan out a thing and then like what am I gonna eat well, even what Jesus said, don't think like the Gentiles do, what I will eat, what I will wear. Like take no thought for your life. Um, yeah, and that's the context of the worrying thing and adding an inch to your life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, he says also that God knows that you need these things. So we're back to the spirit of
Mm,
love that is sovereign. And so then you're in a situation within the king, like to experience the kingdom of God is to experience God's rule and reign over his creation, despite the fact that there are warring elements, that are contradicting this. And we all know that the world actually isn't a safe place, but to
yeah.
believe that it is a safe, actually, can you talk about something? I need to find that quote because Dallas Willard, Dallas Willard talks about this in The
It's
Divine
hilarious.
Conspiracy.
It's like a whole like, can you hold the baby? I gotta, I gotta go.
Yeah,
Like as if the audience is like the occupy them while I find the thing that I need to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Uh,
I've been
well,
laughing at you while I should have been looking it up. I
yeah,
had
yeah, I know.
my
That's
window.
why I started right then. I can only improvise for so long. Yeah, the making provisions. I think I saw this relationship. It's in Peter where it's talking about casting your cares upon him because he cares for you. Um, that I always find that interesting. Like, wow, there's actually two different Greek words, but one's like casting your cares, which is anxieties, like what you care about. That's why even when we were talking about social anxiety the other day, it was like, and the nature of anxiety. I'm not going to go into. There's a lot about anxiety, but what's wrapped up is what you care about. What you care about is what you're anxious about. And so that's even like casting your anxieties. Some translations translate that casting your anxieties upon him because he cares for you. And like one's like to care about. I think that's even monitoring your spiritual growth. I care about my growth, but that's like it could get to the point where it's anxious. But then the other side, he cares for you is like a nurse. How a nurse cares for a patient, and so. Um,
Or even just a child. You don't have to be sick. You can just be growing. Like, I think that was some terminology from years past, like that you'd have a wet nurse or something, like the maid, the nanny that raises the kids. Like, that's, it's a natural need. You need a parent, or you need a guardian to take care of you. Even if you're perfectly healthy, you just don't have the capacity to do so for yourself.
mhm.
But that's the beauty. So I found the quote. I guess I'll give a little context because it's such a profound insight. But he talks about the word heavens and the way that it was interpreted in the.
What are we
Oh yeah,
reading?
this is Dallas Willard in the Divine Conspiracy. And the beginning of the Divine Conspiracy is he lays out a bunch of stuff, but one of the things is the word heavens. is plural, which is so weird because we think of heaven as the place that you go when you die. You think of the heavens like the sky, maybe, and that is one interpretation. So the Jewish at the time of Jesus interpretation of this word would have been one of three things, which is the space, in a sort of astronomic sense, the sky at night or in the day. That's the heavens. We say that still. And then heaven, which is like above that, beyond that, where God has a realm where it's like whatever it is, it's perfect, it's divine, it's not here. And then the third space is right around your head. That's actually the literal way that they would have interpreted it also. So all three of these are true.
So like when Paul's caught up to the third heaven?
Yes, that would have been the, out of space, kind of out of time, the divine
the
space.
Higher than the space, like where God said.
Yes. And then the sun and the moon in Genesis would have ruled the heavens, and that is the space. And an interesting part of this is they all blend together, right? And so what we often lack, actually this is in Simply Christian, I think, by N.T. Wright, we often lack is sort of the unity here, because we think of the world as sort of, I can't remember the right words, but there's a separation between God and us. God is outside of the world and we are in the world.
Sacred, secular antithesis.
Yeah, sure. That's one part of it. It's more along the lines of like pantheist, deist, I think is the one where it's separate. And then panentheist and whatever. This is not what I'm talking about. So, so I was just explaining that because Willard goes into it. He says, with this magnificent God positioned among us. So he's talking about this right around, like the space around our head, all the way up to the sky, right? So it's actually like this weird concept of like filling the space. Heaven is the space, right? And so it's this divine space, the outer space, and then right around our head space. So with us, with this magnificent God positioned among us, Jesus brings the assurance that our universe is a perfectly safe place for us to be. The very heart of this message, as well as of his personality and actions, is found in such well-known words as these from Matthew 6. My advice would be not to worry about what is going to happen to you, about what you will have to eat or drink, or about your clothes. Your life doesn't consist of eating, and there is much more to your body than clothing. Take a lesson from the birds of heaven. They don't sow or reap or hoard away in granaries, and your Father, the one in the heavens around you, sees to it that they have food. Aren't you more important than the birds? That was a Willard translation, but that's literally the passage that we were just talking about. So the main thing, this is what I was referencing, is that line. He's got it italicized in his book. Our universe is a perfectly safe place for us to be because of this magnificent God represented to us in Jesus. And so all of this stuff that we talk about on this podcast about our faith in Jesus, that is it. Like, it's insane because I don't know. I worked at a church, so I've gone through a lot of like prayer chains and prayer groups, and I sound exasperated. Probably some rotten part of me is, but like, it's not necessarily wrong to pray about your ingrown toenail, but it is wrong to worry about it, right? It's like, it could be concerning to you, but it's like, ultimately, you actually live in a world where even though maybe you lose the toe, right? The worst case scenario of an ingrown toenail, I don't even know if that's possible. We got to take it off. It's unfixable. But in that scenario, you live in a world where you're actually still perfectly taken care of by God. And this is like, I mean, maybe we're in the place where, an atheist can't even. That's the thing. Like, that's the difference. We believe that God is real and he is taking care of us to the extent that that's true. That is an outlandish claim that Willard is making. Our universe is a perfectly safe place for us to exist. Like, that's just not true. Like, I know that that's not true. Emotionally, mentally, physically, it's not true. But that's the thing. We walk by faith and not by sight, because it looks like it's not true. And yet, by experience and through transjective experience, we can hear and know through others or through our own experiences that it is true. And these are the things that you can learn to build your life on and walk out, right? Walk by faith. It's like you can move in the world, and you can sort of feel like there's a verse I'm thinking of, like, take no heed. I don't know. You just careless, free. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to it. And I do want to acknowledge, I didn't really recognize what you just said. This thought was something I was thinking earlier. I don't know if this.
I was trailing off, so it wasn't very good.
Okay, good. Because I was also like caught on this thought. So just thought I'd be honest about that before I make a fool of myself. I was thinking, even with the whole expression that the universe is a safe place, it's like that's a trust in the design, like to know that there is a design, and that God made the world to be such, and that with Jesus, the assurance that we haven't completely lost. It's not like it's not an impossibility. We can.
That's literally word for word what I just said.
Is it?
No,
I'm like, well, that's awkward.
No.
I really wasn't listening then. Dang. But just that he restores Eden. He restores. He is. He is our living hope, and that is the hope of like what God designed as he intended. There's an expression of faith. By faith, we believe that God created the world. And it says that in Hebrews chapter 11. And that's like these type of things. And by faith, we believe, because that's why it's not by what you see, because what you see tells you like, it doesn't really, that's kind of a radical thing to believe. Like, this was once all good. This was made by a completely good God, holy God, like these type of things. That's why this cognitive dissonance is an element of faith. That's for anyone to try to rigmarole the way around that uncomfortable truth through apologetics or something, that to walk by faith implies a cognitive dissonance. I think that's testing yourself. Test yourself to see if you're approved. If you're walking by something that's even what we just read before that too. Before that in Hebrews, like anyone who thinks is wise according to this world, they have to become foolish in order to become wise. Like, that's part of the whole thing. It's like you have to be ridiculous. It's a ridiculous. Walking by faith is ridiculous. You're gonna look stupid, and that's why the fear of man is diametrically opposed, because you're going to be persecuted. You are going to be criticized and slandered and maligned. And that's the whole thing about being set apart. There's a lot of tension on the one who's set apart from the group, and even this whole group, the way that we operate, which is, I think that's part of God's design. The way that we operate as community, that is part of His design. Like, we were designed with that, to like anything that's a threat to the continuity of our thing, we ought to deal with it, get it out. But when you call evil good and good evil, it's like, well, you are threatening our ability to operate in a sinful thing that falls short of the glory of God, which is His design. That's another way I would think of sin. You're not operating according to how God designed these things to operate. These things in terms of our faculties of community of creation. When it falls short of the telos, that what we've been talking about too, is like the purpose, the point of it. Like, it was made to serve a purpose. When you fall short of that, that's what sin is. You miss the mark, even if it's a little deviation. That's why believing the absurd that the universe is a safe space because of Jesus. And I mean, that's the only reason, the only way you can believe that is because of Jesus. The universe is a safe spot. Um, and eventually it will come where that won't just be contradictory to what I see. There'll be one day where the child will play in the viper's den and not get bit, right? Like one day that will happen. That's a ridiculous thing to believe too. It's like, well, a lion's got to lay down with a wolf, or a wolf would lay with the lamb, or whatever it is. Like these pictures are like, that's an absurd thing to think that's ever going to happen. You know, the lion's going to eat grass. Like that's why these expressions are so powerful, because it's like that's not according to, you know, what I experience every day. One day something that is utterly absurd to think about will occur, which is peace, harmony, uh, lack of sin. Everything's going to operate according to the purpose it was made to. That was one thought. And if you want to riff on that, I do want to clear up the thought on Paul seemingly contradicts himself, being concerned with the evaluation. I don't want to leave that hanging. I feel like that could stumble somebody. So, but I want you to respond to that thought if you have something.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like, I looked up the word exteroception, but that just means like any of your senses that sense things outside of your body. So,
I even know those
all
word.
5 senses. And I think that there's a way. This is what I think. What Willard is saying there, that the world is a perfectly safe place for you to exist because of Jesus. That is the kingdom of heaven, of God, right? And this is what Jesus is talking about and teaching us to live within, right? This is the door that he's open, like he is the door into that, and then he is the reason that it's the way that it is. And I just was thinking of it in terms of the way that you said, like eventually that is the culmination of these things. That's where we will end up, where that's actually true, which is a weird way of saying it, but I mean that we will be able to see it with our eyes, right? But it's still true here and now. And so there's a weird, the already but not yet of living in it in such a way that we build these habits of perception. So we understand, like, even I think this is why forgiveness is so important, because things are broken. People are broken. People are ashamed. And so they act accordingly. And people are arrogant, prideful. So they act accordingly. We are that way. And so we see these things and we want to have some sort of system to eliminate the possibilities of corruption, right? Like, I want to know that I'm growing spiritually so that I have a sense of safety in the world. But if you can abandon yourself to the actual genuine experience of life with God in the kingdom, then you will come to recognize these things as deeply true, like deep magic, right? From Narnia. It's the concept that these things are undergirding whatever you see on top is something that is twisted or false or broken. And because we take those things to be primary, then we suffer in our vision. But when we learn to take the kingdom of God as primary, then we're able to, I think, interpret things through that lens. Because you mentioned even earlier about the creation and the intention. And there is that built into any type of telos, right? Because you're in a situation where you're thinking like, what was the idea? What was the point? What was the purpose of all of this? And if you have this one that is delivered to us through the Bible across 66 books, no less, like it is preposterous, but it is consistent that he has that same spirit, that same motive all throughout. And so in creation, he has that motive. And then in reconciliation, he has that motive, and all throughout, like it pervades. Then I think I think it's only through experience, but that is the way that you can move towards this place where you can actually learn to trust your eyes. But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's like you're blind and you can learn to trust your hearing and you can echolocate, or you can learn to trust your sense of smell, because these things increase as you eliminate the thing that's deceiving you, right? Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, anyway, that was my thought.
I think even another implication of Brennan Manning's expression is that the whole monitoring spiritual growth, it's like what you desire, like you want to grow spiritually, is actually to be found in the bare feet early on in
Mm,
spring,
mm.
these type of things, rather than whatever the practices that are in keeping with navel gazing. Like what you really want, I forgot how what you just said sparked that thought. This was somehow correlated with what you just said. I have kind of two different, I'm kind of juggling some thoughts in my head, but I do want to carry on this conversation in that way, because I think that's the whole thing. I mean, the heart, what I'm learning is to be more practical. That's experiential. Like, how can this actually be something that, like, oh, I heard this and it resulted in I experienced something. Like I acted upon that thought, and an experience came of it, and that experience was divine. It was a divine experience because I acted upon the wisdom of God, which is sown in peace. Sown in peace. The wisdom of God, righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And so the wisdom, if you heed the instruction, heeding isn't just like, now I think of it in a different way. It's like, well, to actually heed it is like, now I operate in a different way. That's really what. If it's not that, then everything is just, I don't know. It's in keeping with navel gazing. I mean, it's not. If you don't offer a substitute to this whole thing, it's like, or a solution, it's like, I think you're just creating another problem, like, and so I think that's part of the thing too. It's like spiritual growth is to be found in genuine experience of real life, is to be found in the 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 foolish things, like that's a foolish thing to do, like go out, but like in the raw, in the confounding. It's confounding. The places where spiritual growth is found in the place where it's least likely, I think. Um, and that's another thing about how God does things. He does things to confound the wise. Like he takes the things that are not, and he uses the weak things, uh, these type of things that we just would not expect that to be the thing that God uses to do something wildly powerful, but yet it can be like an experience of going out without a raft, and then you find out I still went down the river. Like I don't know, like.
Well, and I was going to bring up, because you mentioned the practical, and I was thinking already before you said that, about practicing the presence of God with Brother Lawrence. And this little tiny book is a beautiful way of connecting with God in your life. Like, you don't need to go and live in a monastery and do holy things. He just washed the dishes, right? And so he wasn't overly pious in any way, but he was participating with God in his life. And so he was present to God and God was present to him. And he kind of lays this out in a series of letters to a friend. And I think that that's kind of the key, is like, at least to the Manning quote, it's like, if you are monitoring your spiritual growth because you think that that is either the key to access to God's presence, uh or whatever the point, you could even be trying to circumvent God's presence in all of this, um then you're wasting your time. And in many ways he's saying, like, you could even have great intentions, but it's still a waste of your time because you're worried about something, concerned monitoring something that's it's not up to you. Like, you don't get to grow yourself spiritually. It's something that, like, this is another metaphor from scripture, but it's like, uh people plant seeds, people water the seeds, but it's God that gives the growth. Like, it's out of your hands. And so
Mhm.
the other things can be in your hands, that's fine, but the growth in particular is out of your hands. And so I think when it comes to spiritual growth, I think in my life, it comes from participation in relationship with God. Like he that is the thing that grows and produces fruit and is the vitality of my spiritual life. And so to monitor, like, is it happening? Am I going to bear fruit this year or this month or today? Like
Yeah.
all of that ends up being sort of a fraught waste of time when, and that's what I think Manning is recommending is like, uh, because I said before that they're images, right? He presents images of like running barefoot and going down the river without a raft or whatever. It's like they are images. Like you can transpose those onto sort of experiences in your life where you're like, well, this is sort of like a river, but there you could just do that too. You could literally jump in a river and swim in it because that is just as viable an opportunity to connect with God. And I mean, I would even say maybe even nature is a great way to do, like a better way to do that than
Mhm.
whatever the spiritual practice that you think you needed to do. And just to close this out, I remember John Mark Comer a long time ago telling a story of uh, some monk, and he spent 20 years being a monk, and came back to his mother, who was just a mother, just, and she raised 6 kids or whatever in a small house, and he just observed her dealing with the grandchildren and going about her normal day, and he was like, I have spent 20 years devoted to my spiritual growth, and you are far more holy or spiritually grown than I might ever be, to his mother. And that observation is so key to what we're talking about. Like you can intentionally devote yourself to results without even getting them, right? Because it isn't up to you. And in many ways, this guy chose a secluded life in order to devote himself to this thing, and it didn't result in what he was hoping it would. Because I mean, who even knows, that could have been quote unquote the wrong thing for him. I don't know. Maybe this moment was. I would trust that this moment is something that God knew was coming down the road, and uh, it just blew up his sort of construct for how spiritual development takes place. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as we, you know, as we devote more and more minutes to our spiritual development.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that in the beginning of First Corinthians it says that um, God has united you with Christ Jesus. For our benefit, God made him to be wisdom itself. Christ made us right with God. He made us pure and holy. He freed us from sin. Um, that's the NLT. And NASB says that Jesus Christ has become to us wisdom from God, righteousness from God, redemption from God, and sanctification. These are like the four things that Jesus has become sanctification. Jesus is wisdom. Jesus is righteousness. Jesus is redemption. And how all encompassing that is. Like, he is wisdom. So when you're acting upon what is wise, when you're actually giving good deeds, because it is Christ who's doing it. He's become sanctification. Like when you repent and are devoted to the purpose you were set aside for, is because it is Christ who is sanctification. In those times where you are off, he sanctifies you. And even in those times where you're doing the things that are not according to him, his wisdom, and it's not according to the purpose, you weren't in a sanctified manner, he is redemption. He even redeems those things. And so that's how godly sorrow is much different than worldly sorrow. It says in Corinthians as well that, notice, Corinthians is those two letters are like the most, I have the hardest time with them. I think that's why I spend the most time with them. But I often quote from them because they're so powerful. But it's just like there's so much going on in it. But anyways, that Christ is wisdom, he is righteousness or sanctification, he is redemption, and he is I already forgot what it was. What was it? Wisdom, righteousness, sanctification, and redemption. I think that's what it was. And so when we're doing right is because he's righteousness, he is wisdom, but he redeems it too. So like even the redemption of if you're going through navel gazing, like he redeems it. Christ is all in all, So it's like this whole expression um, that Paul is saying here is so deeply freeing. It's just like that trust that Jesus, just trust Jesus. I mean, that's pretty much what all of this whole entire conversation always
Yeah.
comes down to. Always
Yeah.
somehow like there's all these different ways we just like this. All the avenues lead to just trust Jesus more with it. Um, if you want to
Yeah.
boast only about the Lord, um, which is funny. Um, did you have a thought on that?
I was just thinking that I think these conversations, because I was laughing that we came to the same conclusion that every single episode comes to. But like all of these conversations are an attempt to contextualize that truth. And I think that's kind of precisely what Manning's getting at is like, you got to get out there and give some context to yourself of this kingdom of God that is at hand. It's right there, and you can participate in it, or you could be concerned whether or not you're allowed to participate in it, or
Mm.
or qualified, or prepared to, or all of these things. And I think it's super important to, like, even the way he phrased it is natural. It's natural. This is the world that God has made, and you can live in it. And there is a world that you are also present to and a part of through your brokenness that is not that way, but it is that redemptive element of who he is, that he is utterly compelled. Like we've been talking about motivation. He's extremely motivated to reconcile, to bring it all back into harmony. And yeah, I think that that's kind of beautiful that we, I'm thinking of Dave Chafee. Like, why do you guys always talk about this? Like Jesus loves us. Yes, I got it. Now I'm going to bed. Like that's great. That's fantastic because he gets it, right? And he lives his life that way. But then you and I, we want to talk about it because that's the way that we, whatever. That's a way that we connect to it, the context. And I think Dave is actually a great example of somebody that practically contextualizes it. He goes in the river and he takes his shoes off and walks around with Jesus and he talks to people and all of that. It's like we're all built differently, but this is one way that you and I try to connect the experience and make it, because one of the cool things about the thing we started with, the quote, and then I got into the transjective truth thing, is like, it's not just each other. It's not just a horizontal transjective truth, but also vertical. And so we don't just sit down here and feel bad that we don't see things the way that God sees it, but we get to participate in our lives in such a way that we have transjective experience. This is the whole thing of like, he has been tempted and tried in all the same ways that we have.
Mm.
He knows what it is to live down here. And that's crazy. Like that, yeah, we can't get into the hypostatic union here, but it's crazy. It's crazy that he's God and it's crazy that he's man, but that is real. And I'm saying it because it's real through experience. And it isn't 100% true to me yet, because I mean, I don't even know how to get there, but that's the rest of my life, is like through each experience that I can welcome him into, that the reciprocal opening, that I could be open to him being open to me. This is the freedom from shame too. Like all of that becomes available through the context of the different things that I do, right? And if you are perpetually concerned with whether or not this scores correctly on your your report on how you're doing, then yeah, you're going to have wished at the end of your life that you didn't devote another minute to monitoring your spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to clear up. I recognize that it could have been sloppy to juxtapose the two thoughts of what Paul says in 1 Corinthians and then to jump and then express the whole thing like as if Paul is deeply concerned with their evaluation of him. Because he even lays out, it's in chapter 11, which he actually quotes that whole thing again at the end of chapter 10 about as the scripture says, if you want to boast, boast only about the Lord. When people commend themselves, it doesn't count for much. The important thing is for the Lord to commend them. And then he says, I hope you will put up with a little more of my foolishness. Please bear with me, for I am jealous for you with the jealousy of God himself. I promised you as a pure bride to one husband, Christ. But I fear that somehow your pure and undivided devotion to Christ will be corrupted, just as Eve was deceived by the cunning ways of the serpent. You happily put up with whatever anyone tells you, even if they preach a different Jesus than the one that we preach, or a different kind of spirit than the one you have received, or a different kind of gospel than the one you have believed. But I don't consider myself inferior in any way to these super apostles who teach such things. I may be unskilled as a speaker, but I am not lacking in knowledge. We have made this clear to you in every possible way. And then he goes into a particular thing of like, was I wrong when I humbled myself? I'm not going to read the whole thing because he's given a particular. There's a lot of context here. But notice, this is like a personal letter between like two parties that have lived life together. Paul spent a year and a half with these people in community, and he's speaking from the heart here. And this is kind of like, I feel even bad about taking someone's like if you kind of think like this person, Paul was in an emotional way. I'm like kind of taking his words out of context and then malign his character, which is the whole entire point of what he's writing in 2 Corinthians. I did not intend to malign the character or to assume motive. That's the whole thing. It comes down to motive. I mean, that's at the end of the day, all this. Jesus even said to the Pharisees, do not judge. You judge based off appearance, but I say to judge with righteous judgment. It's even like the whole story all throughout the Old Testament, like Paul or God choosing Saul and then choosing David to make this point of like it's, he even said to Samuel, I do not judge based off appearance, I judge the heart. He knows the motivations. Like that's what really God's really cares about deeply. And it should be something we care about deeply. And if we are honest for ourselves and emotionally intelligent, we recognize that is what we care about deeply. Because someone's heart is in it, like we can tell. If someone's heart's not in it, we can tell. And so, anyways, the motivation, I don't want to give a misinterpretation. But even to pull from these words that like, I'm jealous for you with the jealousy of God himself. I promised you as a pure bride to one husband, Christ, but I fear that somehow your pure and undivided devotion to Christ. I think that's the whole thing of like how many ways our pure and undivided devotion to Christ is corrupted, just as Eve was deceived by the cunning ways of the serpent. Like with all these talks too, like there's so many ways that our undivided devotion to Christ is defiled, even in the name of spirituality. And that's the point that Paul makes in this passage, even too. Because he says, but I will continue doing what I've always done. This will undercut those who are looking for an opportunity to boast that their work is like ours. These people are false apostles. They are deceitful workers who disguise themselves as apostles of Christ. But I am not surprised. Even Satan disguised himself as an angel of light. So it is no wonder that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. In the end, they will get the punishment their wicked deeds deserve. So there's the whole thing that we still don't judge anybody. It's like at the end, they will answer, vengeance belongs to the Lord. Their works will be tried as well. But this whole thing of like how even the thing that's like the biggest threat to our walk with Christ is the things that have the appearance of wisdom, have the appearance of righteousness, and we can do in the name of Christ, but it's just a little leaven. And just a little leaven leavens the whole lump. That's the thing of like it's so subtle. That's how you get a Pharisee. That's how it's like to the uninitiated, to the one who's not discipled, not actually practiced and truly knows, it can pass as the real deal. But to the one who's actually experienced the Spirit of God, has the Spirit of God, you can know like something seems off here. This is kind of it looks almost, but there's something not real here. Like that type of thing. Like even this whole monitoring spiritual growth, even that's religiosity. That's why religion, I mean, that's the when you read in Revelation with the letters, and when you read in Timothy and all these things about and the end days, like they'll have itching ears. Like the real thing that Jesus is really concerned with and warning his church is like the biggest threat is a religious counterfeit, deceiving his followers, a counterfeit gospel, a counterfeit doctrinal corruption that passes as the real deal. And that's how a great falling away happens, the apostasy. Like that is the biggest threat. That is the biggest threat, is something that is so close to looking like, and it's disguised in, but as soon as you sink your teeth into it, you're poisoned. And I think that's the whole, that's what this, because it's undivided devotion to Christ. It divides your devotion, divides your trust. You start to then trust in appearances. And then it divides your boast. You start to boast in not Christ alone. You start to boast in effort, or you start to boast in. I think that's why Paul keeps stressing, like, may him who boasts boast only in the Lord, which comes from Jeremiah. I think may he boast in not may the strong man not boast in his strength, may the wise man not boast in his wisdom, but may he boast in this, that he knows me and he knows my ways. That's what it says in that passage in Jeremiah, that he knows me and that he knows my way. Like to boast in that.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It is interesting to me just because like the Shema from the Hebrew Bible is in Deuteronomy, and it says that hear, O Israel. Actually, it's interesting. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And he is one is one of the, it's an interesting like monotheistic passage, right? But I think more relevantly, it is that he is the one. I don't want to insert any words to this, but it's like he's one in the sense that he is not himself and the system. He is not himself and his law even, or he's not himself, like he's not contradictory to these things, but he is not to be found in them because he is one. You find him in him, right? And so what was the terminology from Jeremiah?
May he boast that he knows me, he knows my ways.
Yes, yeah. And this is great. We've been doing a thing where James flips open the Bible and does Bible roulette, which I don't even believe in. And like every single time it lands. And this is, we've wide ranging conversations. So, but whatever, it's very, I believe that the Spirit is ordaining these things. So the verse was the whole passage about the sheep and the goats. And I've been thinking about this, underneath this conversation, but it's beautiful right here. Like, that is what the sheep do, right? This is another passage about Jesus being the shepherd, and the sheep know his voice, right? And that's what you're saying. Like, I think the knowing is the basis upon which we can sort of found our trust, right? The trust then goes on top of the knowing, but it's through experience that you know him. And so it's extremely important that you're not sitting back and you're not withdrawn into yourself, like self-critical or self-conscious even. This is like Peterson talks about this, about how self-consciousness is hell, right? So back to the sheep and the goats. He's separating the sheep and the goats. And I was thinking, like, goats are sort of famously unruly, there's like they're like bad sheep,
Yeah.
They were still like goat herded, right? It's not that different. They don't have a totally different process of maintaining them. But I think there is some great difference in the way that they like flock together and all of these things. So there's some bit of that in the metaphor. Like it's not sheep and zebras, right? It's sheep and goats for some relevance there. And the sheep are in relationship with the shepherd. And I've never tried to be a goat herder, but I have to imagine that goats are far more willing to like go and do their own thing without regard for who is in charge of keeping them in the same place. And this happens to sheep too, right? It's not, I'm not trying to make some big thing about the sheep and the goats, but I just think like there's inherently in my mind a relationship between the sheep with the shepherd. And that's sort of a line of distinction, because we tend to think of this as like the sheep are the called out ones, they're the chosen, they're blessed by God. But I said that in the beginning, like I might even be able to include it actually. So maybe you've already heard me say this, but like that you think God is withholding blessings from you when you hear a phrase like, you who are blessed by God. You think, I've received blessings because God gave them to me. But you've received them because you trusted God. That's all it is. These blessings are coming whether you trust and accept them or not. And that's I think the distinction. And so when you think of it as like the people who do bad stuff, they're the goats, and the people who do good stuff, they're the sheep. No, the people who trust the shepherd are the people who do good stuff. There's no connection between the doing good stuff and the blessing or whatever. They're blessed already, and that's the fruit of it that comes out of it.
Yeah. He who has ears to hear, let him hear, like receive.
Yeah. Reciprocal opening.
Wow.
That does it.
That does it. All glory be to Jesus.
Sick. All right. Well, I'll see you soon.